Hello and welcome to our September monthly member webinar titled Understanding Organizational Change in Your VISTA Project. My name is Chris Hawks. I'm a returned Peace Corps volunteer, or RPCV, who served in Belize from 2010 to 12. And I'm joined today by Antonio Rodriguez, who is a nonprofit management professional and just a general excellent human being. Welcome, Antonio, and thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Chris is also an excellent human being, but I'm just going to introduce myself a little bit. So I'm from New York. Currently, I live in Puerto Rico, and for over 2 decades, I've been exploring how leadership development, how storytelling, storycraft, and intergroup dialogue can be used to lastingly impact school systems, media audiences, and orgs around the world. Currently, I do instructional design work for the Latin American Leadership Academy, for AmeriCorps, and for the Posse Foundation, which is this pretty cool nonprofit. That was one of only 10 orgs when President Obama won the Nobel Peace Prize. He gave a piece of the award to 10 nonprofits. We were one of them. And so it's a pleasure to be here with you all today. Thank you. And I want to appreciate how much action there is in the chat. I love an active chat and love that folks are feeling free to express themselves there.
Yeah, agreed. Thanks, Antonio. So, before we kind of dive into the material, we just want to note that during our time together, we'll cover information that will help you understand organizational change in your VISTA project. But we want to note that this webinar is actually a companion to two new e-learning courses that are posted on the VISTA campus that both explore organizational change. So we encourage you to explore these new courses at the link shared in the chat right now. We'll also share it in a follow-up email tomorrow as well. And that's if you haven't already checked these courses out already. We just wanted to note that because we hope that through the online course and the content in this webinar, we'll have the opportunity to learn more about this complex and important topic in the VISTA community. And taking a look at our agenda. So, in our webinar today, we will explore capacity building in your position in the landscape of organizational change, the definition, types, and drivers of change, unique aspects for AmeriCorps Vista members, tools and strategies for navigating organizational change. And finally, we will dive into a small group activity towards the end. And we'll finish our time together. We'll wrap it up with a Q&A session, and we hope to leave you with some tools that you can use in your VISTA service. We'll also share a link to the handout. It's just shared in the chat right now, a link to the handout. We're going to be referencing that throughout the webinar. So you may want to just open that up, or you may already have it up if you received it by email this morning. It's not required or anything, but it could be helpful because we will be referencing it, and we'll drop the link in a few more times as well. So with that, let's get started, and I'll pass it to Antonio.
Thank you, Chris. Cool. So we're going to get started with a an exploration of this question. What is organizational change? Why is it important? So how can we define it? And why is it important for AmeriCorps Vista members? So let's begin with a rough definition. So organizational change refers to the processes through which organizations alter their structures, strategies, operational methods, technologies, or culture to affect change within the organization and adapt to external or internal influences. Organizations constantly need to adapt to fluctuating community needs, evolving government policies, and economic challenges to continue fulfilling their mission effectively. And there are several types of organizational change, and these include structural, strategic, process, and cultural. And we're going to go into more detail about these types later on. So let's consider why this is important. So understanding organizational change can be crucial for VISTA members, as it can directly impact their capacity building efforts and the sustainability of their projects. By understanding change, VISTA members can more effectively support their organizations through transitions and contribute to long-term success. Now, one of the key ways we're going to frame organizational change today is through the lens of something critical to your service, which is capacity building. And VISTA projects are specifically designed to build capacity in nonprofits, governmental agencies, or educational institutions by enabling them to develop new programs, secure funding, expand their reach, expand their effectiveness. Capacity building involves activities that improve an organization's ability to achieve its mission and sustain its operations. Now, this can include enhancing internal skills or resources, but also strengthening external connections. And some VISTA service projects or tasks may arise to fill the need of an organization, and I saw some of that shared in the chat. And others are sometimes implemented to bring about organizational change. So let's explore how capacity building influences organizational change. So VISTA members themselves can serve as agents of change by bringing in new ideas, fostering collaboration, implementing best practices in their organization. For example, a VISTA member might introduce a new volunteer recruitment strategy that boosts community engagement by targeting outreach towards a new local audience. This kind of initiative could have a significant impact on the way that their organization operates and could have been totally introduced by the VISTA member. VISTA members also can have an impact on organizational sustainability. Effective capacity building isn't just about immediate improvements. It's also about creating lasting, sustainable change. For example, a VISTA member might help their organization secure a new multi-year grant, ensuring ongoing support for programs. I'm going to pass it back over to Chris right now for a quick chat question.
Thanks, Antonio. So, for this chat question, we'd like to hear from you again. So, we want to know, how have your capacity building efforts inspired or responded to organizational change? I actually think I saw an answer already for this from the initial chat question, but we'll give you about a minute or so. We'll play some light music and come back, and yeah, please share in the chat how have your capacity building efforts inspired or responded to organizational change? All right. Thanks so much for everyone who has shared. And if you're still mid-typing, totally okay. Please continue to do so. And thank you for contributing to the conversation. I see it moving fast. A lot of items coming in, and it's really great to read about all the different ways that you've influenced change. Seeing some really good ones. I cannot read them all yet. I'm not going to lie because there's a lot, but I am scrolling through as I talk. And I know we'll talk more about capacity building and its relationship to organizational change in the next few slides. But Antonio, just wanted to pass it to you. See, I know there's a bunch coming in, and it's really fast and furious. But any of these responses kind of stand out to you?
Yeah, many of them. Noticing how Apollonia talked about how, these efforts can really help the growth of an organization. She said that in Spanish, en español, como es importante para el crecimiento de una organización. And other folks have talked about where they're at in the process with staff changes, leadership changes, and trying to situate themselves inside of this. And then also, I was moved by what Sarah shared about how, her org is able to reach young people in places where education is not readily accessible. And it's just a reminder of the beautiful responsibility that comes with the work that we do. And so it's important to think about how our capacity building efforts, often have to do with the lives of folks who are dealing with challenges in the communities we serve. And I think that sets us up nicely. Again, thank you for the participation in the chat. I want to keep encouraging that. I think it speaks to where we're heading next, which is thinking about ourselves as VISTA members as catalysts of change, and how important it is to find yourself in the organization. So we're not only just agents of change, we're catalysts of change. And understanding your position in the landscape of organizational change is about finding where you fit into the organization's journey and making the most of it. And I see a lot of that happening in the chat. So as VISTA members, you play a crucial role as a catalyzer of change. Many projects bring in VISTA members specifically to help drive the organization and the change that it needs to succeed. You're not just along for the ride, you're shaping the path forward. But there's more to it than that too. And I want to invite a reflective component to this too, because as you go through your service, this is also a transformative experience for you. Like when it comes to the organization of you, a great deal of change may happen. So we want to also acknowledge that you may find that this journey, as you seek to change and support your organization, may wind up changing it and supporting you on your path. And we just want to acknowledge that. But there's a lot that we can apply the perspectives we explored today to externally and internally. So let's talk about your role. We can move to the next slide. As a VISTA member, you build capacity by assessing organizational and community needs, developing programs, and identifying resources. You may also secure new funding, establish or improve volunteer programs, implement new outreach strategies. And over time, these efforts will strengthen, or can, your organization's ability to serve its community effectively. So let's start zooming into what we mean by organizational change and the different kinds that there are. So we have 4 types listed here on, or about to explore 4 kinds listed on this slide. So first we have structural changes. Now, these involve modifications to an organization's hierarchy, mergers, acquisitions, or downsizing. Lots of folks talking about that in the chat. For instance, a VISTA member might assist in integrating 2 merging nonprofits, and they may work to align the missions and operations of these 2 entities, ensuring a smooth transition and a unified direction for the new entity. We also have strategic changes. These are shifts in an organization's mission or vision or strategic goals. For example, a VISTA member might help an organization pivot from providing direct services to advocating for policy change as part of a strategic shift. Moving on, we can look at process changes. These involve implementing new workflows, new procedures, technologies. For example, here, a VISTA might develop and implement a new volunteer management system that enhances the operational efficiency and improves volunteer coordination. And lastly, let's look at cultural changes. Now, these are alterations in organizational values, norms, or behaviors. A VISTA member focused on cultural change might promote a more inclusive workplace culture by maybe organizing diversity or belonging training sessions that help foster a welcoming and equitable work environment. Now, let's look at what factors might be driving these changes. So, there are external and internal forces that drive organizational change, and we'll discuss some of the most common drivers over the next few slides. So let's look at external drivers first. They play a big role in how organizations evolve. First, consider technological advancements. Embracing new tech can be crucial for organizations to remain effective. Imagine a VISTA member helping their organization implement an updated data management system, boosting their efficiency, improving overall service delivery. Next, you can have regulatory changes. I saw some folks mention issues around this in the chat. New laws or regulations can drive organizational change. So for instance, a VISTA member might help an organization comply with new data privacy laws, making sure to document and train staff on new procedures that keep information safe. Then there's community needs. Nonprofits must keep up with changes in the population and social attitude in the communities they serve. So you could picture a community that has a growing immigrant population. A VISTA member might support a nonprofit's new language translation program that meets their community's growing needs. Economic well-being is another common external driver of change. Economic downturns can hit donations hard, affecting a nonprofit's ability to deliver services. During tough times, they might need to cut costs and enlist the support of a VISTA member to help find new funding sources. And lastly, government policies around funding can also bring significant changes. There was a study by the Urban Institute that showed that 82% of nonprofits have had to make changes due to reduced government funding. So changes in funding regulations can also drive change. For example, a VISTA member might need to develop new reporting systems for their organization to meet the updated requirements for a federal grant, for example. So let's move forward and let's now take a look at some internal drivers of change. So these are things that come from within the organization itself. First, we have performance gaps. This is all about addressing areas where the organization isn't performing as well as it could. So for example, here, a VISTA member might develop a new system that helps staff complete tasks that they're struggling with, such as consistently communicating with volunteers or meeting report deadlines. Also, internal conflicts can spark change. Resolving disputes and improving internal communication is essential. And in the context of AmeriCorps Vista, this might look like a member facilitating workshops to address internal communication issues, helping to create a more harmonious work environment. Leadership changes often bring broader organizational change. New leaders offer fresh perspectives, goals, and strategies, or at least they can. For instance, a new executive director might draw on their previous experience to advocate for significant changes and bring on a VISTA member to support the new direction of the organization. Also, the addition of new stakeholders is another key internal driver. Bringing in new people like VISTA members can introduce new tasks and responsibilities that affect timelines and processes. For example, adding a VISTA member focused on program evaluation might lead to new methods of data collection and analysis, changing how the organization assesses its impact. And so we're going to move into a chat question in a moment. I just want to take a moment just to acknowledge this can be challenging, regardless if it's internal or external, to actually contend with these drivers of change in your service. Some of you have already expressed that it's tough in the chat. Some of you are saying, hey, I haven't dealt with any of these things so far. But I just want to acknowledge that it can be challenging. It often may not be as easy, and it's totally normal to feel challenged by these things, to struggle with them at times. Chris.
Thanks, Antonio. So yeah, we'll have our next chat question here, and we'd like to ask you, have you experienced change driven by any of these factors? So you see on the screen the external and internal factors listed that Antonio just kind of went over. So have you experienced this at your Vista project? Again, we'll give it about a minute or so, and you can either list them, you can expand upon it with a couple sentences, however you feel most comfortable. We'll come back in just a moment. Right. We'll wrap it up, but please, please, please continue to type if you're mid-typing your response. Some really good responses, and appreciate everyone's participation here. It's really great to see just the diversity as well, and just really I got to give all y'all just a big thank you to the work y'all are doing. You're doing so much work for your communities, and it's appreciated. Um, but yeah, I'll pass it to Antonio to see Antonio. If, I don't know if any kind of really stood out to highlight.
Yeah, I see just some patterns, folks talking about how community needs are shifting and evolving, and that can be difficult to kind of pivot towards. And I want to honor, Angelina is talked about how, she's in the middle of dealing with some really rough weather and hurricane conditions where she is. And so even affecting her Wi-Fi. So she's right in the middle of it right now, but also how that's going to create opportunities for her organization to react. So just want to acknowledge, like as you were saying, Chris, that there's a lot that's present for you in these responses. Thank you for sharing this in the chat. I also see some people, responding to other people's responses with suggestions or support resources. Thank you for that. Y'all are awesome for that. So if there is something you think you could do to help or respond to someone who shared a challenge, please go ahead and do so. That's part of what we get to do here together. And we want this to be to be of use to some of these challenges that you all are facing. And there can be lots of unique ways that organizational change shows up in your AmeriCorps service. And I think it's wise just to remember that VISTA's mission is to strengthen organizations that alleviate poverty through capacity building. And we've already touched a bit on what capacity building is, but I want to add that VISTA's goal of enhancing organizational capacity it includes creating sustainable solutions and really digging into an empowering community. And I see a lot of that reflected in your responses. And so just want to honor that again. And we're going to dive deeper into what this means for you and your service. Cool. So there are some challenges that you all are facing. And I just want to honor that one of the biggest hurdles that you face when it comes to change is the resistance to change. People often prefer sticking to familiar processes and may fear the unknown that change brings. And integrating VISTA members into existing projects and organizational cultures, that can be tough. Transitions between members and the short service timeframe that can add to this challenge. Another challenge could be bridging differences in communication styles and expectations, and that can easily lead to misunderstandings. And fully understanding the role of VISTA members, including what they can and cannot do, can be difficult for existing staff. They need to have a thorough understanding of the VISTA program to support members and maximize their impact. And many organizations, they host VISTA members while operating with limited resources. They may have tight budgets and limited staff, which can be tough to navigate. So I just want to acknowledge all of these aspects of what it means for you to face challenges. Now, also want to acknowledge that there are opportunities that accompany organizational change. We hope that this goes back to that internal component that we were talking about earlier, internal as in you and your journey. You'll have the opportunity to develop new skills in the context of your service. And managing change is a valuable experience that can add to your career and personal growth. For example, you may strengthen your adaptability during times of change. And actually, adaptability is a super in-demand skill. LinkedIn recently had that listed as their 2024 top skill of the moment based on their site data. Networking is another opportunity. VISTA members can build professional connections through the process of organizational change, which could open doors, could lead to lasting relationships. And as has been expressed already in various comments, you'll have a chance to make tangible impact in the communities you serve, often in response to the change that you're facing. And that can be a difference that you should feel good about and that you can be proud of. So I'm going to pass it over to Chris just for a brief review of what we've explored so far.
Yeah, thanks, Antonio. So, yeah, we want to give you a quick little quiz question. And we want to know, what role do VISTA members have in organizational change? So, you should see a poll pop up, and it's a single select. So, select the best answer. And I'll read them out as well. You can see the answer responses there. But the first response: enhance their organization's ability to compete fiscally with other similar organizations. Second response: build capacity as a change agent within the organization where they serve. C, generate change at their organization in the interest of shaking things up. Or D, collaborate with executive leadership on budgeting decisions for the organization. All right, it looks like a little over half have responded. We'll give it another maybe 10 seconds or so. Make sure everyone gets a chance. If you aren't able to access the poll for any reason, feel free. Yeah, I see some typing in the chat. That's perfect. Feel free to type in the chat. Okay, give it a little drum roll and let's close it out and take a look. Thank you for your participation there, and let's see how you did. Well, yeah, y'all are awesome. That is nothing new. Par for the course. Vista members are awesome. The correct answer here is B, and a whopping 93% got that correct. A Vista member's role is to build capacity as a change agent within the organization where they serve. So, thanks so much, and I'll pass it back to Antonio.
Cool, excellent, thank you. I want to appreciate, some folks that have been responding to some of our previous explorations, just talking about where these challenges are showing up for them. And so we want to be good to what we should do about these things. What do we do when we're facing organizational change? We want to provide a framework for you to help you, and you'll receive in your handout a lot of what we've explored is reflected in that handout. So the VUCA 2.0 framework, VUCA standing for vision, understanding, courage/clarity, and adaptability, is a little, think of it as a toolbox that you can use when navigating organizational change. In the following slides, we're going to go over each part of the framework, and Chris is going to give us some in-service examples of how they play out. So vision. It involves seeing how your VISTA project fits into the larger organizational goals and how its immediate impact will have long-term effects. Now, this helps you deal with reactions to change, especially when the initial push is uncomfortable for yourself or others. I saw some folks sharing in the chat that they're already dealing with resistance to change at their orgs. So vision can help you set clear goals. It can help you communicate with all your stakeholders to effectively share your project plans and ensure alignment. And it can help you stay focused to keep the big picture in mind during turbulent times. So let's pass it to Chris to see what this might look like in the context of VISTA service.
Yeah. So an example here on vision. So a Vista member, for example, working on a community outreach program, they can create a clear plan for increasing engagement that includes short, medium, and long-term objectives, and share it with their team to ensure, that everyone understands the vision and how to achieve it.
Well, thank you, Chris. Now, the next part of the framework is about understanding, and this means having a deep comprehension of the situation. This often includes understanding your role in the organization. What agency do you have to make changes? What is out of your control? What's a deep understanding of available resources and support, as well as limitations. These things can help you plan changes realistically and with confidence. So to improve your understanding, you can gather information by talking openly with your team and continuously collecting information or data that may be relevant to your project. You can foster relationships by building strong connections with the community you serve and other stakeholders in your organization to gain insights. You can also increase your contextual awareness by understanding the broader environment and how it affects your work. This includes things like expanding your knowledge of local government and community organizations, or learning about internal processes and norms at your organization. Um, and so I just want to hand it over to Chris again for an example of how this might look in a service context.
Absolutely. So an example here on understanding. So in Vista Service, this might look like a member conducting surveys and engaging with local leaders to better understand the community's needs and boost volunteer numbers. So they can then recruit volunteers and allocate resources based on that information, which will help the program, help the resources for the program to go where they are needed. Also to drive volunteer engagement by targeting issues that are already important to them. That information is valuable. Okay, back to you, Antonio.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Now, the C in the VUCA framework refers to both courage and clarity. Clarity means being certain in your abilities and decisions while expressing ideas and information in a straightforward and easily understood manner. And courage is boldness to approach the unknown and innovate. I also want to acknowledge I see folks in the chat already talking about how this is playing out in their service site where they think they believe they're acting in the fashion of a B, they're capacity building, but they're seen as a C. They're seen as like a shaker upper, as a disruptor, and that can be tough to navigate. Because in some cases it takes courage just to initiate change, to take ownership of processes, express concerns, but it also can be received in ways that are not exactly in alignment with what your intention is. So developing confidence to be able to communicate these things simply and clearly, or exploring how you might do that, is part of what we mean by C here. So here's some tips. We encourage the taking of calculated risks where you should be trying new approaches. We certainly encourage, leading by example, by demonstrating your commitment and confidence, but also, asking for feedback, asking how, if your communication was clear, asking for folks to offer their perspective on what's going on, and just keeping it as simple and clear as possible. That can be very helpful. And again, let's turn it over to Chris just for an exploration of what this might mean in a service context.
Yeah, and I think many members, you probably have experienced something like this. In practice, Vista members often face resistance to maybe a new initiative, and they might need to have tough conversations with their team members about, for example, things like reallocating resources to a different area, or changing tactics, which we know happens often.
Yeah, thank you for that, Chris. And I saw two folks in the chat talking about that, they're working at orgs that, say things like, well, this is the way we do it. This is the way we have done it. And that is definitely common to Vista contexts. So let's move on to this last part of the framework, the A component, the adaptability piece. And adaptability is the ability to adjust to new conditions. And as a Vista member, there are many things out of your control, but being adaptable helps you to prepare for challenges or setbacks and recognize them as opportunities for improvement instead of roadblocks. Now, so here's some tips we want to encourage you to try to incorporate adaptability into your service. Just remaining flexible, being ready to pivot when necessary, encouraging innovation by contributing to a culture that welcomes new ideas, but also doing so in a way that can be received appropriately. Learning from experiences, using past experiences to inform future actions, and asking others about the way they've dealt with challenges in the past. And this idea of fostering a growth mindset. So just this idea that we always want to be learning and improving, and that is a special opportunity present in Vista Service. Back to you, Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Antonio. And just a quick example here, an example of adaptability in service could be a Vista member serving with an educational program who adapts their organization's teaching strategies, maybe based on feedback and changing community needs that they've received. That way, it ensures the program remains relevant and effective for the times.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. And maybe something we only briefly touched on that we want to highlight before we close out is communication. During times of change, communicating effectively becomes critical. I'm seeing, and it could be a pleasant thing. Sometimes it can be challenging. I see Rachel has just talked about how much he likes engaging with work study students about procedures, but it can be tough too. Uh, we want to explore a few ways that we think you can improve communication throughout your service here. So first, you can create a working plan that can help you communicate your goals and expectations more effectively. It's such a key part of integrating into the culture and practices of an organization. So, whether it's weekly, monthly, or even a quarterly plan, this can really help everyone stay on the same page about the project's progress and about your upcoming availability and needs. And you might find it helpful to collaborate with your supervisor, with your team to build this plan using your VAD as a foundation. You can take time to familiarize yourself with existing communication tools or practices. That can definitely go a long way. There might even be a sustainability binder or other documentation that you can review. Another good practice is to store your work in an accessible location. So, for example, using cloud-based tools can make it easier for your team to find and view shared files, and making sure folks know how to access them really well. You can also try to establish a sense of collaboration on your project. And you can do this by engaging with team members through workshops, through brainstorming sessions, and through regular progress meetings. This kind of collaboration can help smooth transitions. And finally, don't forget to connect to share successes and challenges and the overall progress of your VISTA project. Highlighting positive outcomes can boost enthusiasm, and discussing and being honest and transparent about challenges sometimes can get you that support that you need. And sometimes we just don't think about doing those simple things of sharing the successes, sharing the challenges. And as a reminder, Vista Connect is a networking page that's accessible through the Vista campus. And that's a great place to share about your service and learn from other members, receive support, kind of like what we're seeing even in the chat right now. I'm going to turn it over to Chris now for this next section.
Thanks, Antonio. And yeah, definitely recommend Vista Connect. Absolutely, as a way to connect with other members, either in your geographic area or throughout the country. But yeah, as Antonio mentioned, we have our second poll question. Here we have a scenario where we'd like your help with a Vista member named Taylor. Taylor is helping a community organization adapt to challenging new funding requirements. What steps should Taylor take to successfully navigate this change and meet the requirements? So that was a mouthful. I know we have, and there are five answer options, and it is multiple select. So there can be more than one correct answer. And in fact, spoiler, there is more than one correct. So that'll be your hint. But we'll give it about a good minute, read through the answer options and select the ones that apply. Okay, if you're still clicking the submit button, this is the final countdown. Looks like most everyone has responded. Okay, let's go ahead and close it. We'll take a look. Let's see how you did. Thank you for your participation there. Uh, as usual, y'all did awesome. The correct answers here are the top three, A, B, and C. So, Taylor should adapt strategies as needed to align with the new funding requirements, communicate continuously with stakeholders to keep them informed throughout the process, and engage community members in the process to secure their input and support. So yeah, it looks like 86% got A, 78% got B correct, and a little less on C on the engaging community, but still almost three quarters with 73%. So great job, y'all. Really great job. And thank you for participating in this poll. So now we are about to break into smaller groups and work together and give you a chance to chat with each other. So momentarily, not yet, but momentarily, you will be placed in a breakout room. It's going to be random, and you'll get to meet each other and work through another scenario together. Please stick around after the breakouts. We'll have about 10 minutes or so, but stick around after the breakouts because we'll meet back here and kind of discuss what you found and then go into our Q&A session with Antonio. So if you look at page 4 of your handout, there's a section called Small Group Activity. We'll share a link to that in the chat as well. So if you open that up, we want in the breakout rooms, we'd ask you to read the scenario and brainstorm solutions with others in your room. It may be helpful to think about a related experience you've had, whether in just a service or another area of your life. So when you get to the breakout room, we'd recommend, first just it's going to be rooms of about 5 to 7 people. And we'd recommend first, giving a brief introduction. Doesn't, maybe name, project, and where you're serving, and maybe what month of service you're in. But we'd probably keep the intros brief. That way you could start brainstorming some of the solutions. So again, you have about 10 minutes. I do want to note if you need closed captions, they will be in breakout room 1. So please use the raise hand feature and we can move you over to room 1. Because again, you'll get just kind of placed randomly right now. But if you use the raise hand feature, we'll get you over to room 1 with the captions. Also, if you just happen to get in a room and people maybe, have got disconnected or dropped off and it's only yourself and maybe one or two others, we'll be monitoring that. We might just kind of like jump in and move you to another room and combine your room. Yeah, we'll give it, we'll have to be quick, but we'll try to give it 10 minutes. Might have to cut it off a little early. And yeah, and we'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back, welcome back. And we still have a few arriving. Give it just a second. Okay, but I think we can move on. But great. I hope you were able to have some conversations in the breakout rooms. Wish we could have had longer, but we do want to respect your time and wrap this up by the top of the hour. So I'll pass it to Antonio for a quick summary.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. And well, I just want to take a moment to appreciate everything that was shared today. It's been really lovely to learn about a little bit about where you're serving, some of the challenges that you're facing. And so just to kind of conclude, to offer a little bit of a summary. So today we really focused on this idea of capacity building, reflected on capacity building and where you're located in the AmeriCorps VISTA structure. We explored how to better understand organizational change and the unique aspects for VISTA members. We went through some tools, some strategies, a framework that you can use to help navigate organizational change. We had that small group activity. And I think that's where we're at. So just wishing you all well with your service, deseándole lo mejor en su servicio. And I'm going to pass it back to Chris.
Thanks, Antonio. So yeah, if you would like to learn more, we have some tools that we recommend you review for further study. These resources are also at the bottom of the handout for today, so you can access them there, but we'll drop links in the chat as well. And we'd also like to get your feedback. Your input is very valuable to us. It helps us to review the content, see what adjustments should be made, and how we can improve it for the future. And your ideas on topics are also always welcome. So please take a couple moments to complete a brief survey. The survey may already be open in your browser window. It's supposed to pop up in your browser, but we'll also share a link in the chat. But thank you in advance for sharing your feedback. And I know we're running out of time, so we won't have a Q&A session, but uh, Antonio has offered to answer questions by email. So if you do have a question, please drop it in the Q&A and we can follow up afterwards. And again, try to use the Q&A instead of the chat. But sorry about the limited time on Q&A. We wanted to we're running a little behind and we wanted to make sure you had a little more time in the breakout rooms. But yeah, a friendly reminder that we'll post the recording and handout used today on the Vista campus later this week. And to access the materials, just need to log in, locate the learning path. Once you're logged in, click on catalog where you see the red square on this next screen, and that will bring you to the available learning paths. Today's webinar will be posted under the Understanding Organizational Change learning path. That's a new learning path that also has those two new e-courses. So you can search for this or filter by members. If it's your first time accessing it, you have to enroll and join. This just takes a couple of quick steps, and once you've joined that learning path, you can browse through all the available recorded webinars and e-courses. So yeah, again, and we wanted to just show on this next screen. These are the two e-courses. We'll drop a link to that in the chat, but we'll also share that in the follow-up email tomorrow that we'll send out. But thank you so much for attending today, and we hope you can join us for our next webinar. It'll be called Starting Off Strong, Professional Workplace Success. We will meet again next month on Wednesday, October 23rd, and the webinar will be at the exact same time, 3 to 4 p.m. We'll drop a link to register in the chat right now, but we'll also send out an email inviting you to register. Also, just want to point out you can register, you can look for upcoming events in the campus calendar. So if you go and log in at the Vista campus and click on calendar from the main menu, and then click on the date, a blue or green dot will indicate an event for that day. So click on October 23rd, you'll see the description and the link to register. So we hope to see you next month. But thank you, thank you, thank you. I know we're a minute over. Thank you so much for your participation today. This concludes our webinar. If you have a pending question or if you want to type in another question for Antonio, please feel free to do so. We'll hang on for a minute or two to make sure you get to submit it and can follow up by email afterwards. Thanks, everyone, and thanks, Antonio.